Hello and welcome. I'm Bryn and this is WA Real. My guest today is Griff Longley. Griffin is CEO of Nature Play WA, which is focused on promoting unstructured play for kids. He's an award-winning journalist writing for the West Australian for just over 14 years. He's director of Lifting Horizons, which is an engagement program for at-risk kids, in particular getting involved with Night Hoops, which focuses on promoting life skills, participation and respect through basketball tournaments. In 2014, Griff delivered a fascinating speech with the TEDx Perth about letting kids take risks, stating that we were facing the biggest shift in parenting in generations. And I really want to get into that in a bit. And last year, he was regional finalist for the local hero category of Australian of the Year. Griff, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much.
Cool.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. So, Griff, you were born and raised in West Australia.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit. Tell me, a Pom who's only recently moved here 7 years ago. What was it like to grow up in Freo?
It was great. So, my dad is from Melbourne. My dad's from Perth. My mum's from Melbourne. They met at a basketball stadium.
All right.
Which is actually speed dating for tall people. That's where you meet people. So yeah, two Australian parents. Growing up in Fremantle, we moved there from when I was pretty young, and we lived in a converted warehouse. We were the first family to live in the West End, down by the Roundhouse.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was awesome. And my brothers and I, we had the mole, out the front of the harbour there, and the harbour itself and the Roundhouse as our playgrounds. So we had very much a feral, free-range childhood.
Excellent. So there's a lot of freedom in that.
It was, yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
It was very much, the classic of mum and dad telling us to be home by dark, and they'd drive home from work and they'd see us sitting on the edge of the high street with no shoes on.
Excellent.
And wonder who those poor kids were, and then realise they were theirs.
Excellent. So how do you think that sort of time and freedom sort of shaped you as a person?
I think hugely. I really do. I think everyone's childhood does.
Yes.
But I think the more freedom people have in that period, personally, I think the better.
Yeah.
I'm sure people come through every kind of childhood and can make of it whatever they want. But for me, having that free-range childhood was huge. And, we'd be gone for days at a time. We'd get in our dinghy and ride up the river and camp up the river. We'd go as far as we could.
The three of you?
Yeah, until the snags closed the river off and couldn't get any further, and we'd pull off and camp and come back 3 days later.
Outstanding. And your parents were never nervous, worried?
No, they were cross every now and again because, we'd have the motor and the outboard would break down, and we'd scramble up to a farm and knock on the door and ask to use the phone and call Dad, and he'd be annoyed that we hadn't taken better care of it, and he'd have to come and save us. But no, they loved it.
Excellent.
They were very conscientiously trying to raise free-thinking kids.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough to let my 10-year-old daughter did a term on the school on Rottnest, and that was a great opportunity to let her just run feral. Yeah. She learned how to use a wristwatch, and come home. She was pretty reliable. Yeah. But it was a fantastic thing. But then when she came back, it was, how do we bring that back?
Yeah, Rottnest is interesting like that, isn't it? Because it's kind of like the clock's been turned back to the 1970s or even the 1950s.
So would you say Rottnest is like a good sort of time capsule of what it was like?
I think it is. And it's interesting to see how that happens, because it's almost as though parents think that pedophiles can't cross water.
Right.
But, all the concerns that we have, most of which are pretty ill-founded,
yes,
don't seem to follow us to Rottnest. And,
right.
It's a wonderful thing. And I think part of what that is that there's all those parents sitting out in the front balconies having a glass of wine.
All right.
And we're in our front of the house, of the share house. And as the kids ride by, a kid falls off his bike, 3 different adults go, "You right, mate?" "Oh, no, I'm okay," and off they go.
And it's very much like that.
Yeah, but, and streets in Perth used to be like that, but we've kind of retreated from the front garden to the front room, back to the games room. And, the back garden's lost as well. But
indeed.
I mean, I think one of the best things we could do would be just to have a campaign to get people on their front verge. I think we'd see huge shifts in community just from that.
Certainly, when I moved here, I was particularly drawn to sitting out the front and having a beer and watching people come by. And I remember not long after arriving here, that I left some furniture out the front.
Yep.
And my parents immediately said, "You're not going to bring that back inside," because back in England that would have been nicked.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's a good spot. I mean, it's amazing to me too, though. So much of where you live is about how you feel about where you live.
Yeah.
And I think our ideas about community are changing in Perth, and I think where the fear is surpassing the realities at the moment, and I'd love to see that dialed back a bit.
So you expand on that a bit more. How do you mean?
Yeah, look, I think we don't know our neighbours as well as we should typically. I mean, there are pockets where it's good, but there's a lot of areas in Perth where people really don't know their neighbours, and as a result, they're fearful about getting furniture nicked. I think that experience of leaving furniture out is probably starting to recede.
Right. Yes.
You know, and certainly with kids being let out, that's changing. I had a workmate who's from Canada, and when she arrived here with her young children, she was kind of nervous by the fact that there was no kids mucking around on the street.
Right.
And she went and knocked on all the doors within a couple of blocks and said, "Look, my name's Nicole. I live in that house down the road. I've got two kids. I can't remember how old they're, 8 and 10 or something like that. And I'm going to be letting them out in the park to play after school. If you've got some kids, it'd be great to see them out there."
Yeah.
And from that one thing, that park went from being empty every day to being full of kids every afternoon. So it's just how we think about the people around us makes a big change.
So when you grew up, was it more like that, more communal?
Look, I think Perth was generally.
Yeah.
My experience was a little bit different because we were the only family living in the West End of Freo. So we had a pretty, it was really just us three boys chasing each other around the place. But in talking to friends who grew up in the suburbs of Perth,
yes,
that's my understanding, that was much more like
much more communal.
Yeah.
What do you think's happened in that time?
Look, I think there's a few things. I think a big part of it is the media. And I've been part of that. But we've gone from a 24-hour news cycle into a 60-minute news cycle.
Yes.
It's just you check your phone 10 times a day and look at more and look at the news, and you're seeing anything bad that happens. You're seeing it many times over, and you're seeing it from the whole world. So you're getting inundated with bad news. And I think we interpret the world, no matter how far away something happened, we think about it locally.
Yeah. I mean, constantly seeing messages at the moment about Donald Trump and career and stuff like that. And, whilst it is important stuff, how's it going to affect me right now, locally? What am I going to do? Am I going to write a letter to Donald?
Yeah.
Hi, this is Bryn from Fremantle. Can you please stop doing this?
Yeah. But if you're like me, it's probably impacting how you feel about the world you live in anyway.
Yes.
Despite that you've got zero control and very little impact. But yeah.
I mean, I watched an interesting podcast recently with a guy called Douglas Rushkoff, who is a lecturer over in New York.
Yeah.
He was saying how all the apps on our phone, not only are they almost like little mini businesses that are ready to explode, but they're also there to keep us in a constant state of anxiety.
Yeah, they really are.
Continually delivering information, whether it's news about big global events, but also then, what are all my friends doing?
Yeah.
And every time you've been away from your phone for a couple of hours, and then you see a feed, you're behind, and you're getting this present shock. Yeah.
It's interesting you mention that, because I've just come back from 8 months living in Seattle.
Right.
Building an app. With an environmental education centre and with some funding from Disney, which has been fascinating. But one of the really interesting moments in that process was meeting with some very, very high profile consultants who, on a pro bono basis, came to talk to us about how we could maximise the benefits of this app. And one of the things they were very, very explicit about is you have to create moments of anxiety.
Yes.
If you're going to convert a user if you're going to convert someone who's downloaded your app into an engaged user, you need to create a moment of anxiety.
Whoa.
And then you need to offer a solution to that moment of anxiety.
How do you feel about that? Let's delve back a minute. What was the app trying to do?
Yeah, well, so the app is it's a ironic concept where we're trying to use screens to get kids away from screens.
Right.
So it's an app that helps families have ideas and follow through on ways to get their kids outside.
Yeah.
So it's activities, and there's a photo safari thing where you go on the equivalent of a safari in your neighbourhood or wherever you are. Instead of shooting the animals, you're taking pictures of them.
All right, yeah.
And recording them and getting them identified. So yeah, look, it's trying to make technology a tool.
How do you create anxiety?
Yeah, the classic thing to trigger action in someone from a behavioural sciences point of view, and look, the people who are engaged in creating technology are very, very heavily focused on this sort of thing.
Yes.
And they do a lot of research and they invest a lot of money in it. But the trick is to create a moment of anxiety. So ways you might do that is have something that's only available for a short period of time. So people have anxiety that they might miss it. You know, so you force them into action in that way. One of the things that was suggested to us by these very lovely people was that, could we create anxiety around safety? So if you don't, do this next part of it, your kids will be less safe because this part of it is going to teach you about safety, that sort of thing. But it was a really interesting process because they were genuinely lovely people.
Yes.
And they understood our mission and what we were trying to achieve. But then they played this devil's advocate role of, okay, so we see that you're trying to do something good, but how can we use these tricks essentially to make it happen? So it was fascinating to hear. We're not trying to generate moments of anxiety in the app in the end. We didn't really take their advice because we're actually trying to do the reverse. We're trying to take the anxiety out of parenting. Yes. But it was interesting to watch and to hear their perspective on it.
How much do you think in modern day parenting we are projecting our fears and sort of cocooning our kids and keeping them safe because we can't handle the anxiety of, they are so important to us.
Yeah.
We bring them into this world, we love them and we want the best for them and everything, and yet any idea of, I remember the first time my daughter came home sort of in tears from school because somebody had said a nasty word, and your first instinct is to go and sort it out. Yeah. But then I had to dial back and go, no, she's got to deal with this herself, despite how I feel. So how much do you think there is something there, and maybe some sort of education for parents to actually deal with their own anxieties here?
I think that's a really, really important point. I think that's a big part of it.
Because they set the context for kids. They set the environment.
Absolutely. I think there's a few things at play there, and I'm sure there's an enormous amount at play. But the things that sort of stand out for me, though, I think we're typically having kids later, and we're having fewer of them.
Right.
If you've got 5 kids by the time you're 22, and you're working full time and trying to put food on the table, and it's all chaos, which was the way parenting was done. It was, it was pretty hand to hand combat for a long time. Yes. Then you don't have time to engage in that kind of stuff, and you're relying on the kids to look after each other and to look after themselves. Yeah. Now we're typically wealthier. Yep. We're older, and we've got fewer kids, so we've got more time, more disposable time. To focus in on our kids. Yeah. So there's that going on. But I think the other thing is it's kind of an unintended consequence of something very positive, which is that we're starting to take parenting pretty seriously. Yeah. We're really thinking about how can I be a good dad? How can I be a good mum? How can I be more present? And we're reading books and we're talking to our friends about it, and that's fantastic. Yeah. And there's a huge amount of benefit that kids get from that. But that focus can become really quite microscopic.
Yeah, you've got to overthink it.
Yeah. So, I think one of the challenges in that to understand that your kid is, from the moment they're born, they're on a mission to leave you. Yes. And to be independent of you. So in that really intense focus of how do I be the best parent, a big part of it that we need to figure into that is how do I prepare them to cope without me? Yes. And if you're thinking about that, from as early on as you can, you start giving them little opportunities to develop those skills. Yeah. I think that part of parenting has been lost a bit.
I find, so I'm a separated parent. Yep. And during that initial period of separation, I was going through quite a bit of shame and guilt, and I wasn't seeing my daughter as much as I used to, etc. And I found myself doing things so we could get on, and we still had that thing. But I was very much parenting for today.
Yeah.
And then it was a while back, I suddenly realised, hang on a minute, I've got to start parenting for, she's 10, I've got parenting for her, 5, 10, 15 years down the track.
Yeah.
And that little change in perception suddenly meant that I didn't mind being the bad guy from time to time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, one of the things, a little anecdote that I've had relayed to me that I think sort of tells that story quite well, is a guy who was a driving instructor in Perth and had been for many, many years, and describing that teaching kids to drive had become immeasurably harder in the last 5 to 10 years.
What was that?
Well, his explanation of it is that the majority of kids getting into that driver's seat of that, L-plated car have never ridden a bike on the road.
Right.
And many of them have really never been a pedestrian in any real sense. They've been dropped from place to place by mum and dad. So how that relates is that there's this effort to protect those kids. So you don't want them out walking on the street because you're worried about what might happen. You don't want them riding a bike on the road because you're worried about what might happen. The unintended consequence.
Parent anxiety.
It is. But the unintended consequence is that those parents who are doing that for very good reasons, from a very good place, are actually depositing their children into the single most dangerous year of their life, the first year of driving. It's when you're most likely to kill yourself.
Right.
They're depositing them at that moment unprepared.
Right.
So that kid is arriving with zero experience. Their depth perception, their understanding of how to move in traffic, human traffic, bike traffic, is non-existent. So they're actually at a highly elevated risk in the most dangerous year of their life because of an effort to protect them.
Mm.
So if you have that kind of image in mind or that kind of story in mind, when your kid's 4, 5, 6, and you take them to Rottnest, and you're trying to get them to ride that bike and
fall off
and
stub the toe
and ride in around the settlement where there's all those other bikes and get it wrong and pull out in front of teenagers who have to slam on the brakes, and all that stuff is protective parenting. And then when they're a bit older, you let them do some walking. You don't always hold their hand, as soon as it makes sense. So you're trying to find ways to engage them in understanding how to be.
So what sort of things can we do?
Well, look, I don't have an easy list of answers for that, but I think just having that awareness that your kid needs to learn over time in a sensible, progressive way how to look after themselves. So it's not just, your job as a parent is not to protect them from everything. Your job as a parent is prepare them to protect themselves. Mm. And that shift in thinking, you'll find opportunities, and the things that you might back off because you worry that they might hurt themselves, you might look at that in a different way if you're thinking about, actually, if they fall off that bike on this very mild little track, it's actually going to be a protective thing.
Yes.
It's actually going to help them be safe when they really need it. But from moment to moment, I think, and that's the job of a parent. You got to figure that out.
Mm. I still think there's a whole thing in there about managing their own anxiety.
Absolutely.
And facing up to that. So, for those who don't quite know nature play, what is it about? If I brought my daughter to an event, what would we experience?
Look, the first thing you'd experience would be a bit of dirt, and your child would probably pick up a stick.
Excellent.
So we really try and provide opportunities. So the events we run is only a small part of what we do, but the events are around setting up a scenario where kids can do some of those things that kids have always done: build cubbies, make mud pies, make a kite and fly it, roll down a grassy hill,
excellent, all
that sort of stuff. And it's actually fascinating, Bryn, because we'll have an event and we'll say, so we had one a little while ago at Yanchep National Park, and all we really did was we organised for the National Park crew to collect branches and sticks for us and put them in a pile.
Yeah.
And then we had a couple of providers come along and help out with little ancillary things, but really it was about sticks. And we called it Cubby Town. And we invited people to come and build cubbies.
Yeah.
And we made a bit of a festival atmosphere out of it. We had 5,000 people.
Wow.
Come to build cubbies.
Wow.
And that's something you can do any day of the week, any weekend.
Yeah. That's kids and
Kids
with their
and
parents.
parents, yeah. So 5,000 people came out and had a huge day building cubbies. Now, for us, that's a great experience for those families. But one of the really important things in all of our events is that we want people to be able to replicate it on the weekends we're not there.
Yeah.
So we would never run an event that a parent can't replicate themselves the next weekend. So look, it's just about...
So this is pitched not just at the kids, but at the
absolutely
adults as well.
Absolutely. See how fun it is. We would never run an event with just kids there because we don't want them to go home and tell their parents what a great time they had,
Right.
and for the parent to go, I hope they're doing that again next week.
Yes, and then they can just offload the kids.
They can offload it. We want the parents to be there to see those eyes go bright,
Yeah.
to see the kid tear around and be excited, to see how easy it is, and for that to trigger something in their parenting.
Yeah. Or touch their own childhood.
Yeah, absolutely. To remember what happened. And they do, and it's across all demographics, and we have people from lots of different countries come along, and you'll see people who you would assume their cultural experience is hugely different, but their experience of childhood has actually been really similar. And they, you got mums in hijabs, watching kids build cubbies and hugely excited and getting it and is remembering their childhood as much as, the mum in thongs and shorts.
Outstanding.
It's a common language. That language of play is a common language. We don't need to translate it for anybody. So we provide opportunities for people to see that and to do it and get their hands dirty. But then we do a lot of just trying to share the message. So we do a lot with the media, and we do a lot through social media and through technology to try and remind people of what it's all about and just to get out and have fun.
Outstanding. And what's your future vision for Nature Play?
Well, I mean, it's been an interesting journey already.
Yeah.
So it started in WA and it's now spread to South Australia, Queensland and Canberra, where, we hope for it to spread to the rest of the states and territories.
Yep.
And we're in discussions with state governments and others to try and make that happen. But really, it's around trying to change the conversation around what good parenting looks like, and exactly what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Parents are really judgmental of each other.
Yes.
And
I've experienced the school car park.
yeah, exactly right. And I mean, one of our goals is we love the idea of a parent bringing a kid to school with a broken arm, and instead of, condescension, the other parents say, what happened? And they say, well...
Looking down the nose.
Looking down the nose. And the parent with the kid with the broken arm says, well, they were climbing a tree and they fell out and the car park breaks out in golf claps.
Yes.
That's where we want to get it to. We want to get it to the point where people understand and support each other in letting their kids have a real childhood and understanding that there'll be some bumps and bruises, but that the big picture will be a win,
So they're continually learning.
Yeah. But in terms from an organisational perspective, what's the future for Nature Play? I hope the future for Nature Play is that we don't need to exist anymore. That would be success.
Yeah.
Obsolescence is what we aim for. But at the moment, it's going the other way. Despite all of our efforts, it's going the other way. I mean, we're getting some traction in Western Australia and in Perth, but there's still so many forces and so many cultural phenomena that are working against the idea of Nature Play. That,
such as,
well, the growing entertainment industry.
Yes.
So entertainment is kind of the enemy of play.
Yes.
Because it's passive and it's in exactly the same pockets of time that kids might otherwise be playing. So entertainment is where kids can relax, and we all love entertainment.
Yeah, it comes to you.
It comes to you, and you're your emotions go up and down with it, and you get a bit of excitement, and it's fun. And we all need a bit of that in our downtime.
Yes.
But we need kids and adults. I mean, we need play in our downtime too. And what's happening is that the entertainment is pushing out the play.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I often will say that calling those digital entertainments play is like calling colouring in art.
Oh yeah.
Because,
I heard that in your TED talk.
Yeah. But it's just that thing of you need to have the black line under your control, not just the colours. You need to be able to shape what it's all about. And
yes.
To start something and decide that it needs to be something else entirely.
I find it's interesting you talk about the technology and the entertainment through that. I've seen a lot of other parents where there'll be the DVD player in the back of the car for a 3-hour journey.
Yeah.
I used to grow up just zoning out, looking out the window, just to drive trucks for a period of time. Or you're at a restaurant and you hear, the kids will go mad if they don't have their iPad or something like that. I find that with my own daughter, she can sit and play with my iPad. She doesn't have one of her own.
Yeah.
And then it'll be, all right, it's time to switch it off.
Yeah.
And there's what I refer to as this Jello layer that she goes through for about 5 or 10 minutes when she's cranky as all cranky because she's been, she's had it all come to her, and now I'm telling her to switch it off, and she says, what am I going to do, Dad? And it's like, I don't know. You're going to have to figure it out for yourself. There's tons of stuff to do outside. There's tons of art stuff you can play with. And I get this cranky sort of recovering smacky for a while. Mm-hmm. And then I just ignore her.
Yeah.
And then 5 or 10 minutes later, it's all sweetness and light, and off we go. And I think, again, sometimes, and I've been guilty of it as well, sometimes in that cranky period, you don't want to deal with cranky kids on top of everything else that's stressful in life.
Absolutely. I mean, that entertainment's great for kids. The kids love it.
Yeah.
It's great for parents. And this is all on the surface level, because it's kind of cracked for parents, because what you don't want is a cranky kid.
Yes.
What you want, and you don't want a kid saying, Dad, I'm bored.
No.
That's a pain. It gets in the way of all the other things that you want to do. Cranky kid, I'm bored.
Yeah.
Parents never used to have an easy solution for that.
Yeah.
Other than say, well, piss off outside and entertain yourself. Now we do. We can plug that hole.
Yes.
As soon as the kid says, I'm bored, you can go, okay, here's the iPad.
Off you go.
Off you go. And parent can go back to what they otherwise want to do.
You anaesthetise that anxiety.
They can anaesthetise their own anxiety. That's exactly right. And they can, they can pacify the I'm bored and I don't know what to do thing. One of the things that we talk about quite a bit is trying to reimagine that word boredom. We want as a parent when you hear that I'm bored, you get that anxiety. Like, this kid's going to be cranky. Am I doing the right thing? Am I stimulating them enough? Are they going to resent me? All that. And it's a synthesized version of that. But what really we suggest is being said when the kid says I'm bored. What they're really saying is I'm about to do something interesting. They don't know. They don't know they're saying that.
They don't know that.
They don't know they're saying that.
They don't know they're on the cusp of greatness.
They don't know they're on the cusp of greatness. But boredom's the precondition for creativity.
Yeah.
You don't make something unless you've had a moment of downtime. Like, you need to be bored to find ways to invent your way out of it.
I love this.
So if a kid, as soon as they say I'm bored, and you deny them the opportunity to invent their way out of boredom, you're robbing them of the opportunity to be creative. And we want creative kids, and we want resilient kids. So let them be bored, and then let them figure it out. And you'll have to put up with that Jello layer and that cranky layer. But then, as you say, if you stick with that, then you'll see great things happen. And you can even do little tricky things, like they say they're bored, and you can leave them to it. But it doesn't have to be leaving them to it in a room with just a few things. You can put a couple of bits and pieces out, a broom and a sheet. Yes. Next to the couches if you're inside. Then let them go. Then step away. If they're outside, maybe you get a couple of boxes from the Harvey Norman down the road, and whatever it is. I mean, there are little things you can sew in there that you let them manipulate, and then it'll take off.
Off they go.
Yeah.
Outstanding. Superb. So, I guess, obviously, Nature Play's trying to bring kids back to play.
Yep.
And reconnect adults and parents with the concept of kids playing. And it sounds like, it's an uphill battle.
Yeah.
What this might seem a dark question, and I'm not trying to bring about anxiety in the audience, but how do you see this generation of kids growing up, and what sort of generation will they be like? I, as a 40-year-old, am dealing with millennials in the workplace. Yeah. And that presents an interesting challenge. And, I didn't think I was part of a generational gap, and now I very much feel like it. Yeah. There's going to be this next bunch of kids coming in afterwards. How do you see them mapping out if this remains unabated?
Well, the thing is, we don't know. I mean, we're conducting an experiment. This has never been tried before. No generation has ever had the situation where they've kept their kids largely inside. I mean, our kids spend less time outside than our maximum security prisoners.
Yeah, you said that in the TEDx. I made me giggle.
So we've got that going on. We're removing that time of boredom. We're having them be more sedentary than any generation in history. We don't know how that's going to play out. There's lots of positives for modern kids. They're getting much more emotional engagement. They're getting the opportunity to explore and research the world through the internet in ways that no other generation has. So there'll be positives for sure.
Yes, the horizons are going to be really broad.
They are.
If you think about yourself growing up in this remote part of Western Australia, which was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But awareness of elsewhere was minimal.
Yes.
So there'll be great things. There'll be really positive things that will come out of it. What I worry about is that resilience and creativity, those two things, are the things that worry me. So what you need in a simplest possible form to promote creativity is opportunity for kids to make stuff up.
Yeah.
Not just be presented with packaged things. Make stuff up. And for resilience, you need the opportunity to make stuff-ups.
Stuff-ups, yeah. I like that.
So you get those two things, make stuff up and make stuff-ups. If you can provide opportunities for that, they're going to be okay. How are they going to be into the future? It's really, really hard to... I don't know.
Yeah.
We're in uncharted territory.
Yes.
But my concern is that creativity and resilience. And we've certainly seen some preludes that are concerning. So, we're seeing in countries like in China, for example, where the one-child policy was around for quite a while, we had some very intense parenting going on.
Yes.
In China.
Much like you mentioned earlier on, yeah.
Yeah, and, there's a real concern has been emerging in China post the one-child policy about a lack of resilience, because you're getting these kids being told how wonderful they are by loving and caring parents through their lives, and then they're rocking up into the workplace and collapsing the first time a boss gives them a hard time.
Yes. So,
I worry about that.
Yes.
But I think we can turn it around, and I think there's ways that if we all, not just parents, teachers, neighbours, if we all value kids making stuff up and making stuff-ups, then they're going to get those chances. But I worry that they're missing those.
Maybe there's something in there for adults themselves to make stuff up and make stuff-ups and give themselves the scope to do it as well.
Absolutely. As a parent and beyond a parent.
And as an adult and any functioning human.
Absolutely right.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been great to chat. If we were going to sum up and take on board what we've been talking about and condense it into Griff's little nuggets of life to help people navigate through life, how would you sum them up?
Well, look, I think that thing we've just talking about is probably the key. Make stuff up and make stuff ups. That's huge. But I also think just bear in mind as a parent that your child's moving away from you.
Yes.
And they will spend the vast majority of their life without you.
Yes.
So while you've got their attention,
yes,
for that fleeting moment before you become totally irrelevant, and I've got teenagers, so I'm rapidly heading into that territory, take the opportunity to provide moments for them where they can learn to be functioning independent people. Because I think we've got to a point where we undersell being practical and having the capacity to look after ourselves. So bring that back. That's not exactly a nugget. That's a long-winded nugget. But provide opportunities for play. Provide opportunities for mistakes. Don't be scared of failure.
Yeah.
Let them have it, and don't overlay disaster on failure. Failure is a good thing. Let them have little failures.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming today and having this conversation. I've certainly appreciated being able to have a very open and honest conversation about parenting, because, as you said, I think we don't have enough of these conversations.
Yeah.
We don't, it's very much my child's doing this, my child's doing that, and there's a big judgment aspect, and we're all proud as punch of our kids and what have you. But how often do we actually step out and have these real conversations about parenting and stuffing up and stuff?
Yeah.
So I really appreciate it. Griff, thank you very much.
Thanks, Bryn. Been fun.
Cool.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.